So we're out here at the McCall Fish Hatchery, and we are going to take a tour of this area today and see what it's all about.
So we'll start here with our Chinook salmon life cycle. Kind of start with the basics. This is basically what we do every single year. We'll go through this whole cycle. So we'll start at the beginning with the eye to eggs. So first they'll spawn, put the eggs into the gravel. One of the interesting things about the Chinook is they will actually bury them under the sand and under the gravel. So they'll dig a little pit, lay the eggs. The male will then come and fertilize the eggs. And then usually the female in front of that will do the same thing, and that kicks up gravel that actually buries them. So they stay under the gravel for up to about 210 days, 7 months total. We'll get to see all of these a little bit closer, but first you'll start to see the eyes develop inside of the eggs, which is kind of neat. Sometimes when we're dealing with them, you'll see them in the trays, and every now and then like the eyes will move and look at you, and it's kind of creepy. We have then the sac fries. Right here, we'll see the sac. That is actually the yolk of the egg still attached, and they'll feed off of that for quite a while. Finally, they do emerge from the gravel, and that's when they start to want to feed. They'll stay in there for another 12 months. Basically, it takes about a year and a half before they're actually ready to migrate all the way down to the ocean. Once they become what we call a smolt. That's about 5 to 6 inches big, and they'll run all the way to the ocean, and then they live there for 1 to 3 years. When they come back, the 1-year-old ones will be a little bit smaller, and then the 3-year-old will be really big. And then finally, they make their travel back up. That can take months to get up there, about 3 months or so. It used to take only about 2 weeks before all the dams and everything went in. We have another map I'll show you guys that it's really interesting to see that difference and how that changed their habitat. But then it starts all over. They come back up, lay the eggs. One thing about most salmon, but not all, is they do die when they spawn. And one big reason for that is the carcass is basically a lot of bugs and worms and stuff like that will feed off of those and spawn themselves. And then when the fry emerge and are ready to feed, they have a very abundant ecosystem because of that. And so all of our fish that we spawn, we actually also take back out there and use for nutrient supplement to help all the wild fish survive a little bit better.
Cool.
And then we'll come over here and we'll kind of just take a quick look at some of the history of it all. So we just have some really cool pictures here that show both the migration and the journey that the salmon take, and then also some cool history stuff we'll go over. Right here we have some pictures. This one's a little hard to see, but we have a female digging a red. So that's what they look like when they're actually digging it out. They'll get right on the bottom and kind of undulate right against the gravel, and it just kicks it all up. A little bit of a picture of a fry here, one that still has a little bit of the sac. This is what they start to look like as smolts and juveniles. We'll get some nice pictures in there, and you guys can see these up close. The smolts we just released, so we don't have any of those right now. Usually about first week of April, they'll start to want to migrate out.
Okay.
We'll go over this a little bit better out there, but this just shows their migration all the way from where we are in Idaho, and it comes all the way out through Oregon and Washington out to the Pacific. It's actually one of the longest inland migrations of any salmon in the world.
Okay.
I think the ones that end up in Stanley are just a little further, and those ones I think are pretty much the furthest inland travel.
Oh, wow.
So pretty cool. We have some cool shots of them just traveling back up the waterfalls, carcass after spawning. And then over here, we just have some cool history on different dams that have gone in, the habitat changes, and also what we've done throughout the years, different stocking and stuff. So in 1934, a lot of the dams start getting put in. And of course, that changes the flow of the river quite a bit. One big difference that we see is the smolts, when they're ready to migrate, they used to just keep their nose upstream and let the current take them all the way to the ocean. They really didn't have to work at all. And now they'll kind of still do that until they get to one of the reservoirs in the dams. And then they lose a lot of the sense of flow, and they have to kind of navigate through that reservoir to find the other side. So that can take a lot of energy and time. And same thing on the way back up.
Okay.
And then right over here, we have some really cool stuff of some of my favorite pictures, I think, just old stocking pictures, how we used to do it compared to kind of how we do it now. So right here, we have back in the day, they used to actually put little fry into milk jugs and to take them up into the mountain lakes. And they would just pack them up on horses, pretty cool. Every now and then we do still hike into lakes to drop them.
What do they use now?
We use
more
kind of like
efficient than
inflatable bags almost.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like a plastic bag made for that. You fill them with water and then a little bit of air on top of that. And they have a cushion, so they protect all of the eggs and all of the different fry and stuff.
Okay.
And then when we get there, we just basically open the bags and let them go out. So, and then we have one of the old fish trucks. Ours are very, very similar now, but I like seeing the old school pickup with it. It's kind of cool. And then the helicopter drops, and we also use prop planes a lot to get up into the mountain lakes. From what I understand, it's pretty much just like 1 or 2 guys that do all of those drops too. So,
yeah.
But yeah. And then here we're gonna start getting a little bit more into the hatchery and kind of how it functions here and what we do. So we'll start with the water flow. All of our water comes from Payette Lake. That's not always the case with hatcheries. Sometimes they'll actually get their water straight from the river.
Okay.
We have 2 different inlets, one very deep at the bottom and one at the surface. And especially during the summer, once it starts to get hot like it is now, we can really utilize that to manage our temperature and try to keep it as cool or as warm as we need for the fish at that time.
Are there pumps that pump it?
There's actually not. No, we're all completely gravity fed.
Okay.
Yeah. Some hatcheries do need pumps and do need heating systems and stuff like that, especially if they're raising like trout or other warm water species. With our fish, it's mostly all cold water, and our lake stays cold pretty much year round, so it's great for it. But both of those inlets will come into a mixing box, and that's also up at the lake. It just kind of, helps to mix the 2 temperatures and get them even. That comes down to our head box, which will filter out any of the debris. We'll get to see that. And then from there it splits, and we have piping underneath the ground that will take it both inside to our egg incubators and our nursery tanks. And then the other split will come out to our outdoor raceways and our collection ponds, which are right out here.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and head inside, and we'll take a look at first the head box.
All right.
So we'll go over this a little bit. This is essentially a map showing the environment, the ecosystem that they both habitate now and what they used to. So we'll go over kind of the difference that the dams made. First, we'll go ahead and look at what we see now. So this is their habitat currently.
Okay.
They come in from here or out from here. These are all the different dams that they have to pass along the way.
Wow.
And one kind of interesting thing is, as we all know, they use a lot of fish ladders and stuff. And the fish ladders, it can take, a few weeks for them to get up over just a single dam, a single fish ladder. So they'll usually jump up a step or 2 and then rest and get their energy back to be able to get up over the next step. And it takes a lot of energy and a lot of time for them to navigate that. And then once they get up over it, they then have the reservoir that they have to navigate and find the exit to the other side of the river before they can continue their journey.
Okay.
So it's definitely a lot of energy, a lot of time spent for them to get up here. Back in the day, before dams, they could just run straight up and really only have to worry about waterfalls.
Yeah.
So it definitely limits their environment. By the time they get up here to Stanley and such, they're pretty much running out of energy and running out of time.
And so like this area, I feel like is the most popular for fish, like the
sure.
Hell's Canyon and out by Riggins.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, you're gonna see a lot more of them being able to get to this area than down here.
Right.
Right, just because, they're fresher.
Okay.
And they pretty much always do go back to the same stream that they were born in. So we actually plant some here and some up further, and those 2 stalks we'll find those same pitted fit or like tagged fish going to those same locations when they come back.
Okay.
So before the dams went in, we used to see this. So you can see the difference that the dams have made.
Yeah.
Before they had to cross all that stuff, they were actually running wild down in the Boise River and even the Owyhee River. So they would get a lot further.
Do you think that it partly affects the population, or you think?
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Not only, is it harder for them to expand that range and get as far, but not as many of them make it. Some of them, just passing some of these dams, they just can't do it fast enough, or their body just, doesn't have the strength anymore. So some of them won't even get up to spawn just because of that. So it definitely affects the population as well as, the habitat range.
Okay.
We'll go ahead and head out and we'll see where the water comes in. So this is our head box. This is where all of our water comes in from the lake and basically gets filtered. So any of the sticks and the debris will be left in here. We'll clean this about twice a day, once in the morning and once at night to make sure it stays clean and unobstructed.
Okay.
Anything, any of like the debris that we do get out of there, will go down a separate side channel and go straight out to the collection pond, basically bypassing the whole hatchery system. So in here, you can see it filtering. We have the grate in there. And then when we sweep it, we'll sweep it this way into this channel, which feeds it out.
Okay.
The water that does go into the hatchery will go through the grate and then goes underground and gets divided like I was talking about.
Yeah.
So the first section of water will come straight in here into our incubations. We'll go look at that. Go ahead. So this is our main hatchery building. This is a kind of a big biohazard risk. So every time we come in, we do have to wash our shoes, get off anything that we might have tracked in from the river, and then also sanitize our hands. Any diseases or anything that does get brought in here, even if it's just in one of these raceways, it'll spread pretty quickly. We take a lot of different actions to try to minimize that. So you'll see at the end here, we have a different broom and net for every single one, as well as a separate bucket. And whenever we're cleaning the vats, picking out dead fish, anything like that, we never cross water. So if anything that goes into this water won't go in any other one.
Okay.
And that helps to do that. We also have sanitization stations down there, so we're washing our hands between vats. We basically do as much as we can to minimize that. We do see just a big natural die-off just from smaller, weak fish, ones that do get different diseases and stuff. Usually our goal is to release about 1 million every year. That's kind of our quota. And we will spawn about 1.3 or so million eggs each year. So we expect that 250 to 300,000 are going to die off. Some of them as eggs. Sometimes we'll have whole trays of eggs go bad. They just don't get fertilized well or something like that. So we account for all of that. Right up here, we can take a look at the different fry. So they get packed in here pretty good. Like I said, total, we have probably about 1.3 million in here right now. Each of these raceways, like I think in this one right now, it's one of the smallest and there's about 70,000 right here.
Oh, wow.
So it's a lot more than it looks like. I mean, just in this, we probably have, I don't know, 25,000 or so, 20,000. So it's kind of crazy. Like when I first started working here, you look at it and you're like, there's no way there's that many in there,
Yeah.
and your brain starts to actually adjust and be able to know how many's actually in there.
That's so many fish.
But yeah, something like this whole raceway probably has, I don't know, 100,000, maybe more, 150. So it gets pretty packed. And then we're gonna be feeding it a little bit.
What do you guys feed them?
We have some different feed types. This is what it looks like. It's basically similar to just a fish food.
Okay.
But it has all of the different proteins and different nutrients and stuff that they require.
Do you guys make it yourself or is there somewhere that you order it?
We order it. So there's a few different brands that make it and they all have their own blends. And I know a few years ago they did a test where they tried a few different brands to figure out how the fish responded as far as like putting on weight compared to how much we were feeding them. So we go with this one. I forget the exact brand right now. I think it's, I want to say BioClark, but there's BioClark, BioVita, a few different brands.
Okay.
And they all do the same thing. They just have different balances and ratios of different nutrients and stuff. So.
And some probably work better for different types of fish.
For sure, yeah. Right over here, these are our incubation trays. And when we are actually incubating, we have eggs. A lot of these guys will be underneath that tub over there on the wall. Basically, that will help to filter out more of the silt and more of the smaller particles that don't necessarily get filtered by the screen. With eggs especially, even just silt, it'll stick to the eggs and start to clean and clump, and that'll make them go bad. We clean these basically like every day. We're going through, working through the whole rack. As soon as we're done, we start over.
Okay.
So we just make sure we keep them clean the whole way through. But each of these trays will hold anywhere from 1 to 2 different females worth of eggs. A typical female has around 4,000 eggs, but it can range from anywhere from 2,000 up to like 8 or 9 sometimes for a really big female. So yeah, one of these can hold up to about, I would say 15,000 or so is the average. And then once they get so big that they start to lose that sac and start to actually feed, that's when we'll move them into here and start hand feeding. It takes, like I said, about 6 months to a year for them to get big enough to be out of here.
All right.
And at some point they need more room, they need more food. And that's when we move them out to the big ponds. So we'll go look at that and kind of see the next step.
Okay.
So these are our 2 outdoor raceways. We actually have 3. We have one at the end that we'll look at real quick. We use that third one for all of the fish that we raise for our Johnson Creek Nez Perce tribe. So they have a weir up on Johnson Creek. They'll trap them, they'll transport them to us and tag them so we know that they're their fish and everything. Each one gets a unique number from them. And their offspring, which were in the first 2 bats that we actually looked at, those will end up in the far one so that we keep them separate from our fish, and we know which ones are going up there and which ones are going to our spot. When we release them, we do take them to the different river systems. These different ponds will hold around 500,000 each, 600,000 I would say, and they'll be out here basically until they're ready to release, about 5 to 6 inches big. When it's time to release, when they're ready to run, we will funnel them down here, and we'll actually use this pump down there to fill all of our trucks. So we can go down there and look at that and kind of see how that functions. So this is what we call the collection basin. This is where the Johnson Creek fish that we raise for the Nez Perce will be. This water will stay separate from that. So when we don't have our fish out here yet, we actually will put trout in here for the summer, and we have those coming on Friday. And these are going to be the trout that we stock all around here in the mountain lakes, in all the community ponds, just so that, you know, the local people can fish as well. And when it is time to release and everything, whether it's trout or whether it's the smolts, what they do is they'll get in the water with the fish. We have a rack and it spans the whole pond, and they'll slowly move them up and crowd them all into a smaller area so they're pretty condensed. The goal of that is to get them condensed enough that we can get them into this pipe here, and just purely by suction. So they crowd them up and the suction will pull them up. They go up the pipe, up to this top tank. That has a screen in there with a mat. If the mat is on there, then basically it'll determine whether we're sending fish out the pipe and not water, or just water and no fish. So we can kind of determine what we're doing at the time. But first, we'll bring the trucks around, fill them with water. They'll cycle back around, and then once they all are filled with water, we switch to fish mode essentially and fill them all with fish. Anything that comes through our hatchery will go into our settling pond. Basically, there's beams that are in the pond that will slow the flow of the water and let all of the waste, extra food, all that stuff settle before it gets into the river. McCall especially, we have a really low limit for what we can put in the water. There's kind of like a no pollution type thing going on. We have to measure like phosphorus levels and all sorts of stuff every single month, sometimes multiple times a month, just to make sure that we're meeting all that criteria. And then every few years we'll go through and we'll actually clean this out. We just did it just recently, and you can see all these bags laying around the settling pond. Those are ones that basically we pump the water and all the waste into there, and then that filters out the water, keeps the waste in, and then we'll transport those here pretty soon out to wherever we need to take them. So pretty cool. And then we'll look at our adult ponds. This is a new feature that we just finished. This is really for the spawning time frame. So
and this is the one where you're talking about putting the cameras up in the future.
So here and probably just, I mean, it's ready to go. We're just waiting till we get fish so we can make sure we get a good shot of them and everything, you know, set it up correctly.
You're like, come check out these cameras with nothing on.
Pointing at a wall, What we were seeing and why we did this is out at Warm Lake, the South Fork of the Salmon where we trap them, we had a big fire out there about 15 years ago or so, and a lot of the trees out there just got demolished. We are seeing some new growth happening. However, it's been pretty slow. And because there's not many trees right along the river like there used to be, the water temp just gets really hot, especially later in the summer. Since the salmon, like I said, are kind of a cold water fish and not ready for fresh water either, it really hurts them. And when that temperature starts to raise, we start to see a big die-off towards the end of the year. So one of my first years here, we saw, I think it was like 2 weeks before spawning, it was like right there. And we started seeing, I mean, sometimes like 50 or 100 females a day dying.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, like when we see that, that's like, you know, all of our eggs and everything we need and have been working hard for, you know. We hate seeing it just kind of go to waste like that, you know. So we decided to take some action and kind of help them out by creating our own adult ponds, utilizing the water from the lake. It stays much colder, much cleaner, and we're just able to control it a lot more. So last year, we were able to finish these ponds just right before the end of spawning, and we got them over here, and just even that little bit of time towards the end of the year in the cold water made a huge difference.
What do you think it helped the population?
It definitely helps them to last longer. So some fish that either were ready to spawn too early and died off and stuff now can make it to the spawning time. So yeah, it's been a big game changer. You can tell just even by looking at the fish and like the quality of their skin, how they are moving. They're less lethargic, you know, they have more energy, they look a lot better. Honestly, in the end, that actually makes our eggs be a much higher quality.
Yeah.
The eggs can grow a little bit more, when we pull them out, like last year when we pulled them, they just looked much brighter, much more, you know, healthy and vivid. And that gets us bigger fish, more survival, all around just much better.
Okay.
So that was kind of the idea of this adult pond. One thing with the adults is they are very easily stressed, so are the young fish. We try to minimize how much we walk between the vats. I don't know if you guys noticed, but the blue buckets with the feed are staggered all around.
Yeah.
And that makes it so we can just walk up and down and not have to take any extra trips between.
Okay.
We like to say like stress in these fish is accumulative. So the more you stress them, the worse off they are for the rest of their life, you know?
Yeah.
So the adult fish, it is on the other side of it. You start stressing them, they're gonna start dying and just not make it to what they need to do, you know? So we have all of this up right now, but you can see we have this black rubber hanging.
Yeah.
That does a couple things. One, it keeps them less stressed. It keeps it darker in there and makes it so when people do walk by down here, they can't see them. We try to keep people from peeking over, and that's why we're trying to set up the camera system. Yeah.
Okay.
So when people come in the visitor center, they'll be able to see a live feed, see the fish swimming around, you know, all that stuff without having to bother the fish and stress them out.
Right.
So win-win. And then up here we have our spawn shed. We affectionately like to call it the Love Shack. So when it is time to spawn, this will be filled with equipment and gear and people. We typically do that right towards about the 3rd week or so of August. I think it's like August 13th is when we start. And people are able to come out and watch, which is really cool. When we are spawning, what this will look like is we have tables on both sides. We have 2 different genetic and data tables, one over here with a biologist. He's checking all of the females for different diseases like bacterial kidney disease, stuff like that. You can come on up if you want. And then on the other side, we have our genetic data, which tracks both genetic lineage and stuff, and then also takes things like ear bone samples and different things for research studies that they're actually doing at like regional office and different fish and game labs.
Okay.
So those guys will come out as well. And how it all works is we have, by the time we start spawning, we're gonna have our fish sorted into these 2 ponds. One will have the females and one will have the males.
Right.
This one's the females. We have people down in here. In the morning, we come out and we actually go through every single fish in the pond. We'll fill the females and you can kind of tell if they're ready to lay their eggs.
Yeah.
The eggs, their stomach gets much looser. When they're not ready, you can feel the tightness of it. And then when they are ready, the eggs release and are actually loose in their belly. And it almost feels like a bag of marbles or something.
Okay.
So you can feel when they're ready. The ones that are ready, we'll put up into this smaller box here. And then same with the males too. And then we have a guy bring the female up here. They bonk the female real quick and kill it. We have a machine that does it very humanely. And then they'll pull them up here and they actually put them on like a rack. They'll slice the tails and let them bleed from the tail. The reason why that's so important is because if any of that blood or anything gets into the eggs, it'll actually ruin the eggs and make them go bad. And can also bring diseases into the eggs and stuff that can spread. So that's a really big thing. So they'll drain those first. They'll take the eggs out of the female and they fall right into a little colander. Somebody will move that colander to this side, which they have a male already measured, genetics ready to go, and they'll fertilize that.
Okay.
They put it into a little bucket with water, and that just lets the milk and the eggs kind of mix and fertilize. That actually only takes about 2 minutes to fully fertilize and be ready to go. From there, they put it into an iodine solution, and the iodine will clean the eggs and make sure that they're all sanitized, ready to go. And that sits for about 10 minutes.
Okay.
And then that goes straight into the incubation trays.
All right.
So from there, they're incubating, we're cleaning them, and raising them.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's all kind of a really big process when you're out here. There's tons of people, people yelling numbers around and stuff, but it is kind of fun to watch. So, if anybody gets a chance, come out here around that mid to late August. Yeah, it's a great time to come. You can see spawning. Sometimes we're still even trapping a little bit. So you guys can go out to Warm Lake and see the trapping going on. At that time, we also have, all of our fish out here. So it's kind of like peak month, is that mid to late summer. But yeah, and then from there, pretty much the whole cycle starts over.
Yeah.
We got the eggs, we put them back out, and the whole thing starts again.
That's awesome.
So But yeah.
I mean, there's so much information.
Yeah. Yep, it's a lot. And it does help, like, you know, for me in my first year here, same thing. You're like, it's just a lot going on and a lot to take in. And it helps to, when you get through the whole process and you get to visually see it all happen, it's pretty cool. This year is actually one of the very first years where the fish that we're gonna be trapping and spawning are the ones that I released my first year here.
Yeah.
So it'll be my first time seeing the full circle, which is pretty cool, yeah.
Nice. So if you're out here fishing in McCall and you wanna know why that's possible, what makes all of that work, and for the population of fish to be enough for you to go out and fish, you definitely wanna take a tour here at the hatchery. If you go onto Google, it will say closed, but they're actually just now really ramping up tours for this year, and they're going to install cameras so you can see the larger fish when they're done. So definitely come check it out here at McCall Fish Hatchery.